Hey everybody, you're watching Together We Harvest, and I'm really excited to bring you along with this video because today I'm going to be planting squash plants. As a matter of fact, we're going to grow enough squash today that's going to last me and my family for an entire year, and I'm excited to bring you along for the ride. The crops that we grow in our garden almost all get started from seed inside the house. Here in Wisconsin, we have a short growing season, so we start them inside. And what we've been using recently is the Vigo grow light, which helped tremendously with the growth and development of these plants. The reason why we use a grow light and start them from seed indoors is because we have a short growing season and we want to be 2 to 3 weeks ahead rather than 2 or 3 weeks behind. If you want to start yours from seed directly in the ground, you can absolutely do that. It's the same process, it's just you're putting it in the ground rather than putting it in these little pots and then transplanting them out into your garden. Right here we've got 28 butternut squash, which is a winter squash, meaning that they're going to store for a really long time. These 28 are going to go into our garden, actually 26, 2 of them I'm giving away, but these 26 squash are going to go into our garden and we're going to be growing them vertically. When you grow squash, I highly recommend growing winter squash like butternut, acorn, spaghetti. Those are the most common ones because they last so long in storage. They can last up to a year or even more, and there's no processing. After you harvest them, you put them in your basement and they last for a year. You don't need to do anything like canning or freezing or anything like that. The way we like to grow our squash are on these poles. I've made videos on how I use these free trellises that I get from my property here and put them together. We're going to put 13 here, so each pole is going to get a squash plant planted next to it, and we grow the squash plant up the pole and sometimes even have it extend on these horizontal poles over here that go this way. In this raised bed over here we can get 13, and this raised bed over here we can also get 13, hence 26 combined squash plants. We've had a tremendous amount of success growing squash in our garden vertically. If you want to grow them horizontally, just remember that it takes a lot of space to do that, especially with butternut squash, because each plant can grow from about 10 to 12 feet in length and even longer if you're in a warmer growing zone. And once they start growing up these poles like this, they're going to go as long as the season allows them to. So you can expect this entire thing to be completely filled with squash plants. It's actually a really cool looking thing. It's nice when you grow them vertically because you can manage pests easier, you can identify problems, they get off the ground, and that also helps with disease. The disease is in the soil, not the plants, unless the plant has a disease first, which they should not. And so once they're up in the air, they're gonna get a good airflow, they're gonna have better access to sunlight. It's really, really great for the plants to get them off the ground if you can. Before I start putting these out into the garden and actually transplanting them, what I like to do is just set one plant by each pole. It makes it easier as you move from each pole and work your way down that way. If you do transplant your squash like I do it because I like having a plant to put in the ground and not just a seed. For us, we've had better success with that, and of course it makes the season off to a good start. But if you're transplanting yours, you're going to want to take them and put them outside just on a tray like this. This is from the Vigo grow light, and take your squash outside for 2 days in a row, maybe just for a couple hours. Get the plants associated with some sun. The first day I choose a shady area. The second day I put them in a sunny area for about 2 hours. After that, maybe on the third and fourth day, I'll put them outside for 5 and 6 hours. You just kind of harden them off. So I plan ahead. If I'm going to be planting on a Saturday, then I usually start the hardening off process on a Monday. It's called hardening off when you put your plants outside and you start getting them used to the weather, because it's one thing to have a grow light inside, that intense grow light, but it's another thing to have the intensity of the sun, which a lot of these plants can't handle because they're not accustomed to it yet. So you do want to harden them off couple hours each day and then extend that, and then the day before you put them in the garden, they're probably good to go for that entire time. And you don't have to really worry about hardening them off after 5 or 6 days. When it comes to the soil, you'll definitely want good, loose, well-draining soil. I order all my soil in my raised beds in bulk from a local gardening landscape company 4 miles down the road. And this is just really good, high quality compost and soil blend. So I'm good to go on there. But if you are working with like clay soil or something, you definitely want to amend it by adding some compost to break it up. And you definitely want to make sure you've got some good fertilizer, high in nitrogen at this point, to add with this. It can be granular or it could be liquid based. This soil is so good that right now I'm not going to add anything. I don't need to amend anything. It's good year after year. I just add compost from our chickens. Right now all I'm doing is making the hole as deep as this root ball right here and twice as wide. So once I have it established here with the hole where I need it to go, I've got plenty of space to fill in on the sides over here. That way you know that you can start side dressing or filling in the sides over here just like this. Now I'm eventually going to mulch everything in this garden. That's what we do with all of our plants. But this is so nice because the soil has been worked year after year. So eventually if you're new at gardening, you can develop this type of soil as well. It was good to begin with, but it keeps getting better each and every year because I keep adding chicken manure and other things to it to help it. And so it's really nice and loose and well draining and full of good nutrients. And so at this point you can fertilize it, or you can add granular fertilizer, slow release fertilizer around the edge to increase its chance of being successful from the start. You want plants to be good and strong when they're young, not have to suffer through a couple weeks of not doing well and then eventually getting better, because that's 2 or 3 weeks that they're not growing to their potential. All right, so I'm going to keep on planting all of these. I've got 12 more to go in this bed and 13 to go in this bed right over here. And then once I'm done with that, I'm going to plant something else right next to these plants, which is super, super important. You don't want to miss that, because that's the difference between having a really, really good harvest and maybe not having any harvest at all. Okay, so I showed you the first one, and now this is the last one. This is number 26 out of 26. So I'm going to dig down the depth of this root ball in here, and about twice as wide as this pot is. That gives you plenty of space to slide this in. You can see the roots are absolutely developed. So I make sure that the dirt in the bottom of the hole is also really loose like that. You can take your spade, chop it up. I can just tell by looking at it that it's very loose. That gives these roots instant nutrients that they can just dive into. They don't have to fight to get into that hard, compact soil. I set it in, and there's a good inch around this root ball of space. And I take this nice loose soil while I hold the stem of the plant with my right hand, usually putting my fingers around the stem so I don't break it off by accident. I've done that before and it's really sad. Let the soil fall where it falls, all the way around it. Press down firmly. I do like to have a little bit of an indent down here so that when I do water, the water is funneled into this root ball and goes right to the source. All of the squash have been planted, 1 per pole. We have 13 in this raised bed. Just to give you perspective, if you haven't seen my garden tour videos, this raised bed is 18 feet long and 4 feet wide, just like this one is over here. So we have 13 squash planted here as well. So the next step is not to water, it's not to add mulch yet. We have to put another plant in the ground next to, or at least by, these plants. One of the best decisions you can make if you are growing squash is to team them up with marigolds. Marigolds are incredible at deterring other bugs and insects that are actually going to harm your squash or could harm your squash. Sometimes I don't have them, sometimes I do. And the main culprit is the cucumber beetle. Now we're not talking about cucumbers in today's video, but cucumber beetles love squash plants. They love to eat the flowers. They cause a ton of problems. And last year we had an infestation of cucumber beetles, and I wasn't thinking far enough ahead in order to get enough marigolds planted. So I had to go to the store and buy a whole bunch of already established marigolds instead of growing them from seed myself. Before I put the marigolds in the ground, I want to make sure that I have enough of the marigolds for these crops to companion plant with them. And so basically what I do is I'll take one of these plugs out, I'll just set it down, and that way I can kind of say, okay, there's one here, there's one there, there's one there. It's more symmetrical, it's going to look nice, but it's also practical in that you have enough to evenly distribute throughout this raised bed and that raised bed. I purposely only use half of these marigolds because I have different plans for those ones over there. However, if you take a look at this garden, which is pretty much done as far as planting is concerned, you will see that I have marigold there, there, here, and there, and there, and there. It's very symmetrical, so it works well within this raised bed just to make sure I know that I have enough. And I did the same over here, except these ones haven't quite been planted yet. I just set them where I'd like them to go. That way I can just walk around the bed, put them in the ground, put them in the ground, put them in the ground. It goes a lot faster that way than taking them out of these little plugs and having to deal with that. Now, I've been using this soil for many years now. It's done wonders, and we just add compost to it like in the fall or early spring, just to kind of mix it up a little bit and give it good nutrients. If you can dig through like this, like I'm doing, and put your crops in without having to use a shovel, that's how you know your soil is good. This has been baking out in the sun. I have not mulched this yet, as you can see. And this should be like rock hard, like a lot of gardens are in the spring after winter, but this is just nice, loose, airy soil. That's how your soil is supposed to be. I haven't been using a shovel to plant these, and I probably didn't need a shovel to do that, just sped up the process. But if you can just put your hand and push it into the soil like this with very little effort, that's how you know, or one of the indications, that you have good, rich soil that your plants need. The next step, once you have your squash and your marigolds established, is to water them thoroughly. So just a nice gentle shower like this, get in really close to the plant, water in the area, maybe count down from 10, and then move on to the next one. It's really important to give these a good water to make sure that the plants do get established with their root systems. It's all about root development at this point. If you have good root development, good soil, you're gonna have a great plant. Get as close as I can, really good soaking for each plant. If you don't have access to poles or trees on your property, that's really not a big deal. A lot of people don't. You can use T-posts. Actually, this is a U-post, but either way, you can use something like this. You can purchase at pretty much any farm store. Another great option are these cattle panel trellises. You get at Tractor Supply. I get them here in Wisconsin at Fleet Farm. They're a little cheaper, but that works really well too. They're 16 feet and there's 5 feet of a space at the bottom. And those are just supported by these T-posts right here using zip ties. Our squash have done really well on these cattle panel trellises as well, but we have different plans for them this year, so we're not using those. Now that everything has been fully watered, as you can see, the next step is actually to mulch your squash. Mulching is extremely important and very undervalued. I look at a lot of people's gardens, they show me pictures, they send me things, I look at them in person, and then I notice that they're not mulching and they're constantly watering and their plants are getting more diseases than necessary. So looking right here, these are all my Roma tomato plants. These Roma tomato plants are mulched completely. Eventually I'll put cages on them because they're bush variety. And we put leaf mulch that we get from our lawnmower on our property, and we do that because we want crops that are going to retain moisture. So if I just dig down here, you're gonna see that this soil is cold, much cooler than the air temp, and a little bit moist yet, which is what you want. If we were to go over to a spot where I have not mulched yet, these are peppers and tomatoes over here, this is like dry, crusty, clay type soil. That's what happens when you don't mulch. So you're constantly watering it because the water just goes through, sun dries out the soil, and now you're stuck with constantly having to water your soil. Not to mention, when it rains, you're gonna find that the splashing either from your hose or the rain goes up onto these leaves, and that's what creates the disease because it splashes the soil onto the leaves, and that creates issues as well. Every single thing in our garden pretty much gets mulched with the exception of maybe carrots. That would be a pain. Butternut squash are winter squash, but that just means because they last throughout the winter, it doesn't mean that they're cold hardy. They're absolutely a summer loving crop. You cannot plant these until after your last frost, either from seed or when you transplant them like I just did. If you have any tips or tricks on how you like to plant and grow squash in your garden, let me know down in the comments below. Feel free to reach out to me at any time. I love hearing from you. Thanks for watching this one. I'll see you on the next one.